Welcome back, CSC 121, to our Python bash intro using PythonAnywhere. And it's just a little informal kind of introduction. We're not doing anything really that complex or spectacular here, just some basic things we learned with the bash console. Now, from here on out, we'll be working with the console down here. We'll see our output in a console down here, so we don't have to go back to bash, even to make new directories and stuff like that. We don't have to do that. As long as this is saved, we can go back here. If I go back here, it goes back to the directory. I could go back here to my main area, and I could make folders here if I want. So I don't necessarily have to go make dir or do any of that, but I just want you to be aware. And you may have one called databases. If you had the database class in the Spring, you might have a databases folder here. And again, these are all default files that are in here that you may see there, that most of them you won't see, but you can go in and see history and things like that. But anyway, to go back to our file, if you need to see your file again, I went here, and I'm going to click on here, and there's my file, and I just have to click on it to open it. And there's our Python file, hello.py. And what I'll do next, just a couple little things, and we'll finish this off. When I printed this out, I made basically what this is a float. It's a decimal number that repeats with 33. Now, a couple things here I can do just to point out. If let's say you wanted to round this off, I can copy this print statement here, and I'm just going to copy it and paste it on a new line. And then this one I'm going to round off. And to do that, I'm going to go inside my parentheses for the print statement. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say round, and then I'm going to put parentheses around my division problem here. Because in Python 3.4 and above, when you do division with a slash, it actually makes a float, whether you use integers or not. So I'm using two integers and it makes a float. In Python 2.7, if you did that, it would just kind of round it off. It would do floor division and it wouldn't give you any decimal on it. It would just say how many times does it go in there, and it would say 33, and it would not give you the full number. So in here, in the new versions of Python for the past couple of years, it actually makes it into a decimal. But if you wanted to round it off, now if you just put round, and notice, make sure you have four parentheses, that you have round, which is wrapping around the division statement here, and then also the print statement has its starting and finishing parentheses. Make sure you do that. So if I run this now I don't have to go back to bash or do anything. I'll just run it right in here, and it should output. It'll kind of create itself each time and run it again. And there it is. The first one is saying 33 with the decimal. The next one, the round statement, is saying 33 because it's just rounding down. If it was 33.8, something like that, it would round up probably to 34. Well, not probably, it would round up to 34, but it would round to 34 if it was 5 or above, just like you would round numbers. Now, if you wanted to do something else, let's say you just wanted two numbers here, you could highlight this. I'll just highlight this and paste it. And this time I'll put round, and I'm going to put a comma after the statement, not after the parentheses, but right in here. I'll put a comma 2. And what that'll do, it put an argument in there with the round statement saying make it two places. So it should give me 33.33 after the 33 here, because it's the third print statement. So let's see what happens. We're still rounding it, but we're rounding it to two places. So let's print that out, and I'll save it first, and I'll run it. And there it is. It's saying 33 with the decimal, 33, which is basically rounded, and then it's showing 33.33 with 2. And one more thing I'll just show here, just because I mentioned something called floor division. I'll copy this, and I'll paste it right after this. I'll make it the second one. And what I'll do here is I'll put two parentheses, //. Now, you might have used those for comments or something like that, but what that'll do is floor division. What floor division does is it doesn't give you any decimal or any remainder or anything like that. It should just give you 33. Depending on how many times it goes in there, it won't give you any remainder. So if I save it and I run it, there I'm seeing 33 again. So it's rounding it to 33, and it's using floor division. So if you wanted to put notes for yourself in here, you could just say floor division with two slashes, and this one rounds up or down, round to two places. And this, I guess it's just doing float division. You could say that because it's giving you a decimal when it prints out. And then one last thing I'll just mention here, just for this little intro, because we don't have to get real deep into anything yet. You don't want to do too much math in the beginning. I'll copy this one here, and I'll do one thing called a modulus, and I'll just say modulus, just so I have it here, and I'll just say prints remainder. Now, to use the modulus, use the %sign. And what it should do is determine how many times it goes in there and then gives you a remainder. So if I save this and if I run it, let's see what's going to happen here. That should be 33.333. This should just be 33. The modulus should actually give us 3 goes into 100 33 times, which will give us 99, and the remainder should be 1. So if we get a remainder, it should be 1. So let's see what happens, and the others will just be like they were. So let's try it out here. And there it is. This one is the modulus. That gives the remainder. This one is floor division, how many times it goes in there. And we'll use that for different things. We even do it for like an RGB to hex equivalent and stuff like that. And here's our float division, here's rounded to 2 places, and this is just our string printed out here. And we're going to do more output stuff, especially in the beginning. We'll talk about different ways to output strings and put variables inside of our string output and put math inside of our string output. All that stuff we have to do. We have to convert our data types. Now remember, we've only talked about 2 data types so far, integers and strings. And we'll also this is a data type essentially because it's a float. And we'll talk about data types a little bit more, and you could see what kind of data types they are, even if you wanted to just try it out. I'll just go down here and say print, and I think you'd use type, doing it out of my head, and I'll put S1. So that should tell me what kind of type that is, and I have to make sure I finish that off. And so I'm just running a little function that's type in there, and it should tell me like a string or something when I print this out or when I output it. So I'll hit save again, and I'll run it. And there it's saying class string. So that's the data type of that. And if I did the other ones, it should say int. So if I did this one more time and I printed out the data type of I2 or I1, whatever one, and now it's saying int. And by the way, just so we know, if I put I3 here, and you might be saying, well, there's no I3. If you just made a mistake and you looked at 3 and you're like, okay, I3, and then you saved it and you printed out, what would happen? You'll obviously get an error. So we have an error, and usually what not defined, you'll see that sometimes, it means you got the variable wrong. Usually when you see not defined, it means it doesn't recognize it. There's no I3. So I'm getting that thing there, undefined I3. That probably showed up even before I ran it. And it's saying there's no variable I3. So I have to fix that there. And then if I make it I1 and I save it and I run it, I want to make sure you save the source file before you run it. We're almost doing the same thing we were doing in Bash, except we're doing it all right here. We're doing code here, and then we're outputting it, running the source file every time we hit run. And we're running the source file, so that's saying int. So we have string, int, int. Those are the data types. And even if I made another one here, I'll just make one last one. I'll put F1, and I'll just put 3.55, and that should come out as a float. So if I print out the data type of that one, and that one is F1, so I should get the data type of that. That should come out as a float. So let's see what happens. I'll save it again. I'll run it. And now it's saying float. So we have 1, 2, 3 different data types here that we're looking at up here. Different kinds of division that we're doing. Float, regular float division by default, where it'll make a decimal. Floor division, where it'll just kind of give how many times it goes in without any remainder. If you just want the remainder, and that's, you could use this stuff to figure out even and odd numbers, if it's divisible by 2, or if it's not divisible by 2. We can use that. So there's ways to figure out even and odd numbers. There's ways to convert things, especially when we do hex. We could round things. We can round things up, round things down. We could choose that using ceil or floor. And all we're doing is printing right now. So it's real basic kind of stuff. But this is a little bit of an intro to some data types and using the interface for PythonAnywhere. Now, all that you have to do is save, and you don't have to submit it to me. So just save your file, and in part 3 of this video, I'll show you how to submit it in my Warren. Or not submit it, but just alert me that it's finished.